Let's start with a question: how much pain do you think you can handle? Think about the worst pain you've ever experienced. Maybe it was a toothache that wouldn't let up, or maybe you sprained an ankle so badly that every step felt like torture. Now, imagine something different and intense, sharp pain in your abdomen that comes out of nowhere, starting as a dull ache and growing worse with every breath you take. That's what appendix pain feels like.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
When we talk about appendix pain, it's not just a typical stomach ache. It's a pain that demands your attention, and once it starts, it doesn't let go. The tricky part: it often begins so quietly that many people like you or me might ignore it, thinking it's just indigestion or gas. But as it intensifies, you start to realize something's very wrong. At first, it might feel like an uncomfortable, gnawing sensation in the middle of your abdomen. It's subtle, just enough to make you shift in your seat, maybe rub your stomach absent-mindedly. But this is just the beginning. What comes next is the real test. Over time, the pain begins to shift. It moves lower, settling in the lower right side of your abdomen. At this point, it feels like someone's pressing a sharp object into your gut every time you move. Bending over, standing up, walking, everything becomes an ordeal. And here's where the challenge comes in. Can you survive this? Can you push through the intensity of appendix pain without reaching for help? It's not just about tolerating the discomfort, it's about recognizing that this pain is unlike anything else. You can't push it off as something that will go away on its own, but many people do. Maybe you would too. You might try to sleep it off or convince yourself it's just something minor. After all, none of us want to believe that there's something inside our body that could burst at any moment, right? The next stage is where it gets serious. The pain doesn't just stay in one spot, it spreads. Your whole abdomen starts to feel like it's under siege. Every movement, even breathing, becomes painful. It's as if your body is screaming at you that something is wrong, but at the same time, you feel trapped by the pain. You try to adjust your position to find some relief, but nothing works. The pain follows you no matter what you do. At this point, if you're still trying to tough it out, you've entered dangerous territory. This isn't just any pain, it's the kind of pain that could signal your appendix is about to rupture. And when that happens, it's not just the pain you need to worry about anymore. A ruptured appendix releases bacteria into your abdominal cavity, causing a life-threatening infection called peritonitis. It's one of the reasons why appendicitis is considered a medical emergency. But by the time you've reached this level of pain, can you even think straight enough to get help in time? Imagine being in that moment. Your body is giving you every signal that something catastrophic is happening, but there's still that voice in your head. Maybe it's not that serious. Maybe it's just a bad case of gas. And that's the most dangerous part of appendix pain. It tricks you into underestimating it until it's too late. So here's the question I want you to think about. Could you survive this level of pain without getting help? Or would you recognize it for what it is and seek treatment before things get worse? Pain, after all, is subjective. We all have different thresholds. But appendix pain is different because it's not just about enduring, it's about listening to your body before the pain becomes something you can't control. Now let's dive into why appendix pain feels the way it does. The appendix is a small, tube-like organ located in the lower right side of your abdomen. No one really knows what its function is, but when it becomes inflamed either from an infection, blockage, or some other reason, it swells and fills with pus. That's where the pain begins. At first, the inflammation triggers the visceral nerves, which cover a broad area of the abdomen. This is why appendix pain starts as a vague discomfort around your belly button. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where the pain is coming from. But as the appendix swells more, it starts pressing on the surrounding tissues and parietal nerves, which are more localized. This is when the pain migrates to the lower right side of your abdomen. By this point, you're likely curled up, trying not to move because every shift makes the pain worse. But why does appendix pain hurt so much? It's because the appendix is essentially a dead-end tube, and when it becomes blocked, there's nowhere for the pus and inflammation to go. The pressure builds, and your body reacts with intense pain to signal that something is very wrong. But here's the most deceptive part of all. The pain can fluctuate. Sometimes it might feel like it's letting up, giving you false hope that it's going away. This is where things get really dangerous. If the pain suddenly stops, that might not be a good sign. It could mean your appendix has ruptured. And when the appendix ruptures, the release of infectious material into your abdominal cavity can lead to peritonitis, a severe and potentially fatal infection. You might wonder, could someone actually survive appendix pain without medical treatment? The answer is technically yes, but with immense risk. In rare cases, the body can wall off the infected appendix, creating an abscess. But more often than not, a ruptured appendix leads to widespread infection and sepsis, which is life-threatening. If left untreated, it's a painful and slow deterioration. So, the next time you feel a strange pain in your abdomen, don't just brush it off. Appendix pain demands attention because ignoring it can lead to serious consequences. But let's think about this in a broader sense. Why do we often dismiss the signals our body gives us, waiting until it's almost too late to act? Is it because we think we can push through? Or is it because we fear that the reality might be worse than the pain itself? As you imagine what this kind of pain feels like, ask yourself, how well do you listen to your body? Could you survive appendix pain by recognizing it early enough to get help? Or would you try to endure it until it's too late? Now that we've set the stage for understanding what appendix pain feels like, let's dive even deeper into one of the most dangerous aspects of this condition: what happens when you wait too long. Many people, when they first feel appendix pain, make the mistake of thinking it's something that will pass on its own. Maybe you've been there, ignoring a strange pain, hoping it will disappear, convincing yourself it's no big deal. But with appendix pain, that decision to wait can be the difference between life and death. Imagine this: you've been experiencing that sharp, persistent pain in your lower right abdomen for hours, maybe even a day or two. You're still trying to convince yourself it's nothing serious. You tell yourself it's probably just something you ate or maybe some gas. But deep down, you start to sense that something is wrong. The pain, instead of fading, has become more intense, more focused. Here's where things get dangerous. For many people, the idea of seeking medical help can feel like an overreaction, especially if they've never experienced anything serious before. We've all been there, right? No one wants to rush to the hospital for something that might turn out to be nothing. But appendix pain is not something you can afford to underestimate. As the appendix swells, the risk of it bursting grows, and once that happens, everything changes. Let's take a closer look at what's really going on inside your body during this time. As we mentioned earlier, the appendix is a small tube-like organ that doesn't have a clear function. But when it becomes blocked, whether by stool, a foreign body, or even an infection, it starts to swell. Think of it like a balloon that's filling with pressure. Except in this case, the balloon is trapped inside your body, and there's no way to release that pressure. As the appendix swells, the tissue around it starts to die. Blood flow is cut off, and this leads to necrosis where parts of the appendix tissue begin to die. It's a slow, painful process, and your body is desperately trying to tell you that something's wrong. But what happens when you wait? What happens when that pain, which started as a dull ache, evolves into something unbearable, and yet you still try to ignore it? Here's the most terrifying part: if you wait too long, the appendix will rupture. And when that happens, all of the infected material inside the appendix spills out into your abdominal cavity. This triggers a condition called peritonitis, which is a severe, life-threatening infection of the lining of your abdomen. Peritonitis doesn't just affect the area around your appendix, it can spread quickly throughout your body. And once the infection spreads, it's a race against time to prevent sepsis, a potentially fatal condition that can cause organ failure. Think about that for a moment. What started as a manageable pain, something you could have acted on earlier, has now escalated into a medical emergency. At this point, your body is fighting an all-out war. And this is where the survival question becomes real. Could you survive appendix pain if you waited too long? Maybe, but the odds are stacked against you. The biggest problem with waiting too long is that by the time the appendix ruptures, the symptoms may actually become less severe, at least at first. This is incredibly deceptive because the initial release of pressure might cause a temporary sense of relief. But don't let that fool you. That momentary relief is just the calm before the storm. The infection that follows is far more dangerous than the pain itself. Now let's take a step back and consider the mindset that leads people to wait too long. Why do so many of us ignore serious symptoms until they become emergencies? Is it fear, denial, or maybe a combination of both? Sometimes we convince ourselves that the pain will go away because we don't want to face the reality that something could be seriously wrong. And let's be honest, there's also the fear of the unknown. What if it's not just appendicitis? What if it's something worse? These thoughts often make people hesitate, and in that hesitation, the condition worsens. Here's something that might surprise you. Even though appendicitis is one of the most common surgical emergencies, many people still don't know how to recognize it. And that's one of the reasons why they wait. They don't want to seem like they're overreacting, or they think the pain is just something minor. But ignoring appendix pain is one of the worst mistakes you can make. So how can you recognize appendix pain before it's too late? There are a few telltale signs that should always raise red flags. The first is the location of the pain. While it may start near your belly button, it almost always moves to the lower right side of your abdomen. This shift is critical because it signals that the inflammation is becoming more localized. Another sign is that the pain doesn't go away when you change positions. With most types of pain, you can adjust how you're sitting or lying down to find some relief. But with appendix pain, every movement seems to make it worse. Other symptoms include nausea, vomiting, fever, and loss of appetite. You might also notice a sensation of bloating or an inability to pass gas. These are all signs that your body is in distress. But the most important thing to remember is that the pain is persistent. It doesn't come and go, it sticks around and intensifies over time. Now, let's think about this in a broader context. Pain, in general, is the body's way of communicating that something is wrong. But why do we sometimes ignore it? Is it because we don't trust our bodies, or because we think we can endure more than we should? Pain tolerance varies from person to person, but when it comes to appendix pain, it's not about how much you can endure, it's about recognizing when your body is sending you a signal that can't be ignored. So what happens when you finally realize the severity of the pain and make it to the hospital? If you've caught it in time, surgery is the most common treatment. The surgeon will remove your appendix in a procedure called an appendectomy, and most people recover quickly with minimal complications. But if you've waited too long and the appendix has ruptured, the surgery becomes more complex. The surgeon not only has to remove the appendix but also clean out the infected areas of your abdomen. Recovery is longer, and the risk of further complications increases. In some cases, people who experience a ruptured appendix develop abscesses, which are pockets of pus that form in the abdomen. These abscesses need to be drained, either during surgery or afterward. And let's not forget the most dangerous possibility: sepsis. Once an infection like this spreads throughout your body, your organs can begin to shut down. This is when appendix pain becomes more than just a localized issue, it's a threat to your entire system. Here's where I want to ask you a deep question: how well do you really listen to your body? Could you recognize the difference between a minor pain and something life-threatening like appendicitis? And if you did feel that sharp, persistent pain, would you act on it quickly, or would you wait, hoping it would go away? These are questions that we don't often think about until it's too late. But knowing how to respond to your body's signals can be the difference between life and death.